I want you to imagine for a second you're sitting in a room, you're at a keynote, there's this super interesting speaker, you're not sure what to expect, but he gives you some really inspiring stuff, and you learn a lot, and you go back to your life and your work or your job, and you start to implement some of these things, and you become like this huge, amazing hero. You get a triple promotion, you like transform the whole company. That keynote is going on at the other center right now. That's not this one. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I couldn't resist. Okay, finding out there's two centers. Okay. Now I am going to talk about two things that I really love. Which are not my two children. I mean, I do love them, but that's not what I meant. I'm going to be talking about two mindsets that I've learned that I think are the most important things that I've learned. I was very fortunate. I don't necessarily think I'm something amazing by any means. I think I was just very fortunate to work for some very innovative companies. I think Disney and Google are both known to create amazing innovations all the time. Disney has an entire department called Imagineering where this is all they do. And Google, of course, is known for innovating new products, or at least they used to be. So there was two big things I learned from working for them. I'm going to start with the first one. It's a type of mindset. It was embedded in me. It really has changed how I think about every new business. I call this mindset think exponentially, and I'll explain what that means. So think exponentially is a mindset that, who's heard of 10x thinking? Has anyone heard of 10x thinking? You guess. So Larry actually came up with that concept. Think exponentially is this idea of think about ways to impact your life or your business or what you're doing, not just incrementally, but transformatively. Enormous, enormous changes. An exponent is like 10x, 100x, 1000x, right? That would be an example. So unlike incremental improvement, exponential thinking seeks transformative change. It's a good example of a transformative size difference. The vast, vast majority of companies out there are extremely incremental in nature, right? They work on very marginal changes. And there's a lot of reasons for this. The first could be they're usually going to quarterly goals, right? They only have to think about making a little bit more money for the next 3 months. And at most they have 1 year that they're thinking out, or 2 years. So they are not the type of companies that think big. They don't want to think about huge transformational changes. If they do, it's a very big process. It takes a very long time. It's not in their DNA. Another reason might be because they don't reward risk-taking. In fact, some companies penalize risk-taking. If you take a risk and it doesn't work out well, you actually don't do well, right? It actually hurts your career. And these are things that, these kind of cultural things go against the ability to think exponentially. And I'll talk about why this is such a powerful area. Startups, on the other hand, and you heard some really great entrepreneurs here, startups, on the other hand, do have very lofty goals. They have great exponential thinking, but they lack the resources sometimes, right? They lack the ability to go out and do incredible, dramatic types of things, right? A startup that sits there and says, I'm going to think about a robot that's going to come to your house and walk around and do all these things for you, that requires enormous millions of dollars of capital, which they don't necessarily have. And so this is the struggle. Every once in a while, you find a company that has the type of thinking and the resources and the culture, all three things, to make a difference. I'm going to tell you an example of a story of thinking exponentially. So who remembers, I'd say, okay, given this audience, most of you will remember this. This is average age is closer to me. Okay, so AOL email or Hotmail. Did anyone have this, by the way? Most people did. Okay, probably everyone, unless you're like 20 and less. Okay, so do you guys remember how much storage you were given in your email? Does anyone remember?
10 megabytes.
Yes.
2 megabytes.
You got a whopping 20 megabytes of storage. And this was after some time. It started at 1 and 5 and 10. This means if someone sent you a big picture your email would say, sorry, you can't send any more emails. You have to go and delete your emails. This was an enormous, enormous, annoying problem. Now, Google said, we want to enter this space of email, but people are obsessed. They love their email address. It's very hard to get you to change your email address. Imagine how many people you have to tell, and you've told your doctors, everyone, right? So how do we get people to switch? And they said, if we just come out with 30 megabytes or 50 megabytes, it's never going to work, right? No one is going to switch. So we have to think exponentially, right? And does anyone remember what actually happened? This launched. Of course, they made a huge mistake. They launched on April 1 of 2004. So everyone thought this was an April Fool's joke because they came out and said, we're giving everyone 1 gigabyte of email storage when it came out. Now, for the math nerds or the CS nerds will know what that means. This is 500 times more than what you got from the leading email provider at the time. So all of a sudden people said, that can't be right. Now, by the way, they did a lot of other cool things in Gmail, right? There was the conversation view concept and way better spam protection and integrated chat came later. They did a lot of other things. But that single change meant people were flocking to it. That's the kind of thing you need. When I've been in business-to-business software for a long time, if you need someone to switch the software they're using, you cannot be 10% better or 20% better. People don't move. They don't get out and do anything until it's 10x better. We used to tell people all the time, make sure you are 10x better. So, this is just one example. Here is another example of the types of innovations they do. This is a group, who's heard of, people may not have heard of this. There's a group within Google, now in Alphabet, called Google X. Google X is also known as the Moonshot Factory. Their job is to literally come up with moonshots. The idea of a moonshot is exactly what it sounds like. This crazy goal, like Kennedy set, we're going to land a human on the moon, right, by the end of the 60s. I think this is exactly what these are set out to do. Some examples of the ones they did. These are true examples. One of the first ones was a Project Chauffeur. We don't think people need to drive themselves. We should let the car drive itself. People thought they were out of their mind. Now it's slowly happening. There was a Project Wing, which is actually very cool. Project Wing was this idea that you can make deliveries with drones. Is actually now happening and tested in a lot of places. Actually, Australia, I think there were people from Australia here. They're already doing it there first. Project Loon is this idea, how do we get internet to a lot of these huge countries that have very, very poor infrastructure? It's too hard, too complicated. You can't run fiber and cable and DSL. So what if we fly hot air balloon internet over these countries? This is true, literally what they did. Can you imagine going into a meeting and saying, we'd like $1 billion to fly balloons, and then you get the approval. You get thumbs up, right? This is a kind of craziness. There was a Project Iris, which is, can we sense the glucose for your body in your eyeball, right, with a contact lens? Literally, and they sold this company to Novartis. Project Makani, one of the problems with these wind turbines, right, they're great. These, generate energy from the wind. It's there, it's free. It's like they used to do with water, straight running water. It's a fantastic idea. The problem is every once in a while the wind just stops. And so, but there is wind at different levels of the atmosphere. So they said, what if we ran an energy kite that would take that wind, but we ran it with a kite that would go up and down at different levels and catch wherever the wind was, and then run it down an electric wire, right? These are the kinds of crazy ideas. Anyway, so you get the idea. Project Glass, which was augmented reality glass, so you can just blink your eyes and it takes a picture, you can see your email. Google Fiber, let's run gigabit to the house. At the time, the fastest was, again, very, very sad. And it's not, Google is by no means the only one that comes up with all ideas like this, right? They are not the only ones that have these phenomenal ideas and crazy ideas, and most of them do not work, by the way. I'm giving you examples. Many of these have closed projects. Some did exceptionally well. One of the most common examples of disruptions, this is a non-Google example, you will remember, let's see if you remember this one. You remember this? Who got the envelopes in the mail? Does anyone remember? A lot of these, right? By the way, there was a time when these were, and I'm not kidding, like some enormous percentage of the total postal service was these red envelopes. Huge percentage. What was this big innovation that they did? The big innovation they did was, they said, You know, as soon as it went from VHS, which was painful, you remember this? You'd go to the video store. It was like a whole day operation. It was very exciting. You'd go to the store and you'd fight. I don't want to get that movie, so you'd get both. And then you'd get 3, and you would never get them back in time, or you would call and say, when is this due? It was a complete nightmare. As soon as DVDs came out, they sat on top of that idea and said, what if we mail a DVD to you? But the big change wasn't that I get the DVD in my house. What if we send it to the house, and we have one other big change. We will have no due dates at all, right? Absolutely none. And so this idea of you just pay a monthly subscription and you can keep it as long as you want. As soon as you send in one, we'll send you another one, right? Very, very game-changing. Again, so big in disruption that they were able to completely unseat an entire chain of stores, right? Really incredible. But I think what's exciting about this Netflix story, you guys have all heard this before, I think what's exciting is not that. I think what's exciting is this company did it again. They looked at the DVD innovation and they said, let me ride on that, let me do something else. And then they did it a second time. They said, hey, this thing called the internet is out. What if you didn't even need a DVD? What if, right? Who remembers it when this first came out? By the way, they were the very first major streaming service anywhere at the time when they came out. And people said, really? And at the time, by the way, the internet was slow. This streaming service had like nothing, like not a single movie you'd ever heard of in your lifetime when it first came out. I don't know if anyone remembers it, because I was on the beta to test this out, and it was miserable. I'm like, what are these movies? I've never heard of them in my lifetime. But they went out and they started buying up rights just so that they could show different movies. But they not only disrupted themselves. Imagine launching a product that's going to hurt your other business. But if any of you have read that Clayton Christensen book, Innovator's Dilemma, by the way, great book, many entrepreneurs have read it. That's exactly what he says to do, right? Spoiler alert, I'm spoiling the whole book for you. But the summary at the end is, disrupt yourself before you get disrupted. Go take a small group within your company, go off to the side, and figure out the next thing that's going to disrupt you and actually do that. And so that's actually what they did. So that was an extremely impressive thing for them to do, and then they did it a third time. What did they do? They looked not just 5 feet ahead, they looked a mile ahead, a kilometer ahead. I'm in Canada. They looked way far ahead and said, what's the next thing that's going to disrupt us? And they said, most likely, all of these licenses that we have from Paramount and Disney, these guys are going to want to stream themselves. And so we need to create original content. And so what did they do? Again, they didn't come out with some random little original content show. They went big, right? They got huge stars, Kevin Spacey, all this, and came out with House of Cards as the first huge production value, studio level, and these were The Crown. I don't know if anyone's seen this show called The Crown, which was, I think, the second huge one to come out. They said The Crown, to make that show, cost more than the actual British Crown itself, meaning the cost to maintain that system. So anyway, so the idea, what I'm trying to say here is to find a company that has disrupted itself multiple times is so extraordinary. Okay, so let's take another example real quick. I think one of my favorite things to do is take this Netflix example, take the Gmail example, and say, how can you use it in everyday life? I have been so trained in this that I can take any business someone comes up to me with and I can tell you what will likely disrupt it and where you should go. And I don't have a superpower to do this. I have just been trained to think far ahead. Who's going to disrupt you and what's going to come after you, and make sure you're the one doing that. So if you take something like transportation, I want to use this example just so we can quickly go through the disruptions. What was the biggest disruption? If I need to go 2 miles away, 3 miles away, 2 kilometers away, after walking, what was the big disruption? Who remembers? Does anyone know?
Bicycle.
The wheel. That's right. All of these things had the wheel. So the wheel was the single biggest thing. I can move myself, or I can move goods, right? If I'm trying to move goods a mile away, right? Fantastic. What was the second one that came after that, the big one? Who knows? The big one was, why am I pulling this darn thing? Let's strap it to an animal and have the animal, right? This was actually a huge thing. And that actually went on for a long time. Our animals are going to, so we said. Then there was another disruption. What was the one after that? An animal pulling it was, who knows, the big one? An engine, yes. So then engine, right? Because, you know, the animals leave little packages along the way. And by the way, this was still going on in huge cities. And so huge cities did not like having to step over this to get to their work. So came up with the engine. What was the next big disruption is we're still, by the way, it's been 100 years, more than 100 years, and we're still sitting on 4 tires. Just imagine this area that we all are impacted by how we drive all the time. And it still has, it's barely changing, but the next big one is the one we talked about. The car will drive itself. Does anyone think that's it? Is that the, and don't get me wrong, the car driving itself is phenomenal. Just so you get some stats, by the way, this will blow your mind. 162 lifetimes are wasted every single day by people sitting in traffic, especially here. 162 million lifetimes in a day are people just sitting in their car. So if you can get that time back by being able to read or work or sleep or whatever, it's going to be huge. But the other problem, the other reason self-driving cars are going to be so huge is 1.2 million people are killed every year, right? Because of people get tired, people get distracted, people are texting, etc. So is that the end? I have a friend actually at Waymo. He's the chief product officer at Waymo, very good friend, Indian guy, by the way. And I said, you know you're going to get disrupted. And he says, I know. And we both knew what we were talking about, because this is not the end of transportation for moving me if I want to go 3 kilometers away. There's probably a reason that Larry invested in self-flying cars. Because what's being tested now, again, ironically, in the Australia-New Zealand region, is VTOL aircraft, right? Personal, tiny aircraft. VTOL means vertical takeoff and landing, right? The concept being it's safer, there's no traffic ever, because you can go to a different altitude and just get there. You're much faster, right? So these ideas are not some dramatic thing, but what's important is that the people that are working on self-driving cars better know that they're likely to get disrupted. And so the best way to do it is to be the ones that are doing that. Always be looking ahead. Now, the good news is that's going to be some time, so they have some time to work on their self-driving. Okay, so I would say the biggest thing I would say from all of this is to think about how you can leverage other people's technology as you're going. All of the innovations I just came up with are about leveraging what someone else did, right? Look at the breakthroughs that have come in the past and then continue to do them. And don't stop, right? This was the first big one. We talked about personal computer. I just talked about it, right? The personal computer was an enormous, now all of a sudden you could do productivity, you were using a typewriter before, now you can self-correct and edit, you can print 20 copies, you can learn things, there's encyclopedias, there's all these things on the personal computer was huge. The next big one, right, was this. Do you remember what people went crazy building on top of this, right? The dot-com era, who remember, I can sell pet food delivery to your house, every conceivable, I can get driving directions, I can look up the weather, what were all the things? Oh my God, there was a lot. I can sell books online. Someone became very wealthy doing that, by the way. I can index the entire internet and make it searchable. There was one company that did that. There were many, actually. What was the next big one? This was huge. Again, think of these as big shifts that are coming. All of a sudden, people are like, oh my God, this is huge. You're carrying this around. You have a camera, and all of a sudden your cameras are disrupted, minus the really nice ones that are around here, right? But your camera's disrupted. You can make payments with it. You can call a car with it, right? There's this huge amount of stuff you can do, and probably, there's another one that's come now. And if you watch any financial channel at any time during the day ever, you will hear these 2 letters all the time, nonstop, and it isn't really that much hype. You'll see. It's very real what's coming. Okay, so I'm going to get to that in 2 seconds. So, tremendous amount of disruption happening. Why should your organization think like this? Think about these disruptions and think about what's coming. One is, of course, because you don't want to get disrupted. We just talked about that. The second big reason is it's good for your organization's goals. If your organization wants to grow and explode, you have to take these big risks and you have to be moving forward. I would say there's a third big reason to do this. It's very good for your employees. When employees are working on incremental stuff and they're just staring at their computer and they just want to die, right? If you're working on exciting, exponential things, it's very empowering. It's better for recruiting, it's better for retention, it's better for happiness, it's better for productivity. So that is a third very, very big reason. And I would say lastly, it's really, really good for humanity. Right now, there are only way less than 1% of all the companies in the world are doing 99% of the innovation. Just imagine, 99% of the breakthrough things we see are coming from less than 1% of companies. The rest are just continuing to do what they always do. They're just shuffling along, right? So imagine how good it would be, how good the world, this is my picture of this amazing world, by the way. How great the world would be if, iStock photo for the win. Okay, how great the world would be if you can do that. So, all of you must be thinking, well, okay, first of all, this is never going to work at my company because they're all idiots, okay? And everyone is slow, and I want to kill myself, right? And I get it. Trust me, I have worked at those companies where everything is slow and nothing is ever going to work out, right? It is absolutely possible that every single company, and I've seen it, and I'll tell you how. It's because you don't start by going to the CEO and saying, you suck, we're incremental, I'm quitting. Do not do that, right? It works because people started within a team. They make incredible progress without that team, and people start to take notice. You become heroes at your own team. You can start it, in fact, with just your own role, and then show your team what you're doing by thinking big and thinking outside the box. So this is absolutely doable. I would say there's 3 things you need in order to make this transformation possible, okay? You need audacious goals. We'll talk about that. We talked about it briefly. You need the right environment, and you need the resources to be able to go for it and try this, right? So, what do we mean by audacious goals? Now, Google, if you wanted to pitch an idea at Google, this is a true story, you could not pitch an idea unless it was going to impact the lives of 1 billion people or make $1 billion. Just imagine how right away that's like your little tiny cute goal of I think we should open a Brooklyn pizza place is not ever going to pass, right? It has to be something that is literally that big. And all of a sudden that makes you think differently. One of my favorite quotes ever is a quote by the head of Google X, actually, Astro Teller. And he says this quote, it's so great. He talks about the power of big goals. If you don't have a big goal, you will never, ever do anything extraordinary in this world. Think about that, how crazy that is. He said, if I gave you a car, and I said, look, this car is getting whatever, 35 miles to the gallon. I don't know how to do kilometers to a liter here. We're just gonna, okay, you will work with me. Okay, and I want you to get 50 miles per gallon out of it. You'll tweak it, you'll make some changes, and you'll do things to it. But if I say this car needs to go 500 miles on a gallon, all of a sudden you have to throw out everything. And you have to completely think about the problem differently. All I did, 50 could have been a way to get to 500, but by giving you 50, you're incrementally working. If I tell you you need 500, you're like, okay, well, we got to put wings on this thing. I got to put a rocket jet on the... You completely rethink the whole thing. And I think that is the power of audacious goals. Give yourself that 500 miles goal. Don't give yourself the 50 goal, because you're just going to be doing incremental work. I absolutely love that. All right, the second one is the right environment. This is another true story. I love these little cute stories like this. Very, very early days of Google, Google did not have a lot of money, and this employee had tried out this project, and it did not work, and he lost $1 million for the company. And he was petrified. There was a board meeting at the time. The whole company was in one small building, and he had to go to the board and present on the status of this project. And he's like, how do I say this was an epic failure? Good God, I better dust off my resume. Yahoo is down the street. I'm probably going to be there. Okay? So he goes into the meeting, and he says this, and everyone can tell he's scared. Larry and Sergey are there. You know, I don't even think Eric was there yet. And Larry stands up, he walks over to the guy, and he gives him a big hug. Not to console him and stop him from crying, but instead he said, well done. And the guy's like, what do you mean well done? He says, I'm glad you took that risk. If you're not taking that risk, we're not doing the right stuff, right? That culture, imagine that culture of, I'm so glad you took that risk, right? Most companies do not do this. So it not only needs to be there from the top, which is very rare. Again, you can do it at your team level. Start with your team level, set the right culture. It makes a huge difference. But I'll give you an example of where it falls apart. If your performance reviews, down to your performance reviews, do not reward risk-taking, you're still not going to do it. Here's a test for all of you to see who here is the math geek. If I said you have two options for a project, one is a 1% shot at $1 billion, or you should go after that guaranteed $1 million reward. Which would you take?
The 1% chance.
Well done. The 1% shot at $1 billion business will get you more money every time, right? Because a lot of times you're going to hit zero, but overall, the expected value of that, the E of X of that, is $10 million. But what's the problem? On the performance review, if you tried for that $1 billion, what usually happens at companies? Oh, look, it didn't work. No. But this guy brought in $1 million. This girl brought in $1 million, right? Promote them. And this is exactly the problem, is the systemic all the way down to the performance reviews are broken at most of these companies. Luckily, there are still some innovative companies that reward risk-taking. And lastly, I would say the resources to go do it. If you want to take some of these big bets, you have to have the resources to do it. So how do you have these resources? You tell the story, you try at a small scale, you prove it at a small scale. And I have lots of ideas on this, by the way. Again, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Start with a small portion of the project, prove it, and if you make progress, they will pour gas on it, right? What's the first step in this Think Exponentially section? The big first step is to actually do something. These conclaves are fantastic. Everyone learns, they absorb, they eat good food, but then most likely we go back and what do? We open up our email and we go and we're reactive to all the crap that is there, and again, we want to kill ourselves. So the hard part is thinking about what is that first step? What's that small thing that I can do that's going to make a difference and going to think 10x? And it's very, very easy to do it, right? You could literally go online and do a search and say, what would be the 10x disruption for my business, and get a whole list of ideas, right? And just even having those, starting to have those ideas and think about it for whatever you're doing, by the way. This is not just in work. You can also talk, but I was told to talk most about entrepreneurship and business side here. My second favorite quote, also from Astor Teller, guy's a genius. He says, the limit of your own ambitions is the glass ceiling to what you can accomplish. It's such a phenomenal quote. What he's saying is, the limit of what you believe you can do is the glass ceiling. You will never do more than you think you can do. So if you don't think you can make any change in your company, you're not making any change. Like, it's just so true the way he says it. All right, so great. First mindset, hopefully you understand the power and importance of thinking exponentially. Now we will get to what's setting the world on fire right now. The second mindset I want to talk about is this one. What does this mean? This means, this is not coming, by the way, this is very much here. It means, as strange as it sounds, every single thing you do and think about now needs to be done with the lens of AI. As crazy as that sounds, every single thing, everything about your health, everything about your work, everything about your projects, your relationships, how you deal with people, is incredibly enhanced and changed if you are seeking the advice and research of artificial intelligence. And the people that don't will be fine for some time, but they will be in an enormous deficit later on. Imagine if you are a person that is doing huge amounts of math every day, but you refuse to use a calculator, right? It is the absurdity of, or refuse to use a bank, right? There are people to this day that are scared of using a bank. They say, my money is safer under my pillow. Of course it's not. But there are people that refuse to use these types of technology. Another example I give is, imagine you've got, actually, I'll get to that in 1 second. I actually have an even better story. Okay, so what is AI? I'm going to talk about it briefly because I'm assuming you guys have heard this term a lot. So this is AI. No, I'm kidding. This is not AI. This is Hollywood thinking exponentially. Okay. Who knows what this is from, by the way? Does anyone know? Yes, very good. Okay, good. Okay, so people know. Okay. AI, very simply, is about computers doing things that used to require human intelligence. Okay, that's all it is. It's a very simple, but it is an extremely broad term. What that means is AI is everything. It's not computers learning on themselves or self-aware, any of that nonsense. It's simply artificial intelligence that makes it look like they are intelligent. That's all it means. So a good example would be, you walk up to a computer terminal and you say hello, and it says hi. And you say, how are you? And it says, I'm fine. Now, a lot of you might look at that and say, well, that's pretty intelligent, that's pretty cool, it knew how to respond to me. However, that could have been hard programmed, hard coded they call it, which means it could literally have been rules in there that if someone says hi, you say hi back, and if someone says how are you, you say I'm fine. Now, there's no neural network there, there's no advanced intelligence, this is probably this many lines of code, I'm not exaggerating, like that's how hard that would be, but that is a level of AI. That is the whole sphere of AI, but as you get a little bit deeper, you get to this concept of machine learning. Machine learning now is not just based on some rules, but it is based on the computer starting to learn itself, which is pretty amazing. And the way it does it is with something called a feedback loop. It learns what is correct and what's not correct, and it starts to self-adjust. So if you give a rules-based system a feedback loop, it actually starts to get better and better. What is this used for? Has anyone done in Google Photos where you can see all the friends that have the same face, or you've labeled some faces? Have anybody even labeled their faces? I do this, by the way, it's kind of cool. So you can be like, where are all the pictures of me and Devin and Shania? And it'll show me all the three, or me hugging Shania, and it'll show me all the pictures of me. It's kind of cool. But anyway, so that is all done by machine. No one sat there and coded, what does a pink parasol picture look like? That never happened, right? But it learned over time because there were enough labeled images that it actually learned what that means. How did it do it? It could have learned it through standard feedback loop in a rules-based engine. Most likely, it learned it through something called a neural network. And we're getting deeper now, but this is the more interesting thing of what a neural network is now we are teaching computers how to think similar to how the human brain thinks. The human brain has these billions and billions of neurons. Very similar concept, actually. I can go into how it works if you want to come by later. It's actually very, very interesting. Each neuron is like a little node. Each node is looking at some tiny thing in particular. It gets an input. Maybe it's looking at a certain pixel or whatever. But then all of these nodes decide how important is that. They fire or they don't fire a certain amount of weight. And then you can think of them all as voting, and they're coming up with an answer like, yes, I do think that is a pink parasol, or I do think that is a monkey, or whatever it happens to be. Okay. And then lastly, you get to what has really been the big breakthrough that everyone is kind of freaking out about now, which is something called deep learning. If I take that neural network and I make thousands of them layered on top of each other, I can start speaking in real language. I can understand large contexts. I can make a video. I can make an image from scratch, because I understand the concept of what is a West Highland Terrier, how does it look, what would it mean if I had a West Highland Terrier eating a banana? So now you can do that online and it'll actually make you a picture of that, right? And I think this is probably why people have said, my God, this is so scary, this feels alive. And all deep learning is multiple layered neural networks. One neural network is just looking at the shading of the image, and maybe another one is looking at the colors, another one's looking at the outlines, another one's looking at the face, the eyes. And so each one is separately optimizing its own thing, and then together it's actually coming up with an answer, which is pretty cool. Okay, so what can AI do that we should be using it for? I would say these are some key examples. First of all, it will tirelessly answer all of your annoying questions. And do it very politely. No matter how annoying and bizarre your questions are, it will keep answering. It will suggest anniversary gifts for you, so you stay married. It will decide which Netflix show, like Tiger King, should suck up huge portions of your life that you will never get back. And after binging on that, it will recommend what it thinks are similar, but nowhere near similar, like some Korean zombie drama next to The History of Salt. And you never understood why it recommended those, but that's that. And then it could be Amazon suggesting you buy socks 5 seconds after you just bought socks. It could be Spotify building your playlist called These Are Songs That I Love, but that I won't admit that I love. It could be Google Maps rerouting you. Much faster than your spouse's fantastic backseat driving does. It could be helping students write their essays for school, or, show that they read a book where they never even opened it up. It could be Instagram showing you an ad for a knee brace right after you told someone that your knee was hurting and now you're freaked out, and yes, your phone is listening to you. No, I'm kidding. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. Okay. No, I don't think it's listening to you. Exposed. It's not listening to you. Okay. So what was the big game-changing thing that happened here? Late in 2022, ChatGPT came out. And again, thinking about what I said about thinking exponentially and leveraging huge technologies. They leveraged neural networks and deep learning. Google had actually published a concept of transformers years ago. So they leveraged all of that. They leveraged the enormous computing power that had then become available. And they put it together, and they made it accessible with a small chat box. And they sent that box out. And instantly people were blown away, right? Every several years I look at a technology and I'm like, oh, wow, that is incredible. So this came about, but what else can it do? That made LLMs, these large language models, very, very popular. But AI can do much more than just text. It can take as input text, images, videos, sensors like temperature readings, LiDAR, radar. It can take joystick controls. It can take combinations of these inputs, images plus audio and video form. It can listen to and understand all of that. And what can it output? Any of those things. So imagine now, we're talking about a multimodal, accept any type of input, accept any type of output. And the reason it's important to know all of these capabilities is because it will help you understand the types of things that you can ask and do. If you don't know that the AI is there already, and I literally did this. I do this all the time now, probably 30 to 40 times a day I'm using it for something, but I literally took a picture on the back of I can't remember what it was. It was some weird deli meat that my mother had, and she insisted that this was healthy. And I said, I can guarantee you this is awful. So I took a picture of the back of the ingredients, just a picture. And I said, can you go through these ingredients and tell me which ones are good? And it literally made an entire table instantly of all the ingredients and said, these are bad. These nitrates have been shown to cause cancer. It went through all of them, right? So I think this is an example of, a lot of people don't know, you can send in images, you can create videos, you can do all of that. And by the way, most of this is actually free now, which is pretty scary. But the biggest things you can learn to do is learn to use large language models the right way. If you are not using it the right way, you're not going to get the power out of these things, right? Imagine next to you as you're walking every single day, you've got this incredibly omniscient, knows everything, answers anything all the time, standing right next to you, but you don't know the 6 keywords to use to unlock it. Right? If you don't speak the same language, that's exactly what you're doing. So there's a few things you can do. A lot of people in the early days of the LLMs, it was hallucinating and all of these things. It can still do that, by the way. But knowing to say something like, if it's important, say, cite me your sources. I want to see where this came from. Like, that should be automatic. Right? Or knowing the difference, by the way, when to use what model, right? There are certain creative models that are much better, right? The 4.5 ChatGPT, for instance, I use for certain things, but the O3 and deep research you use for different things, right? There's times when you want very creative, give me 100 ways to say yes to my wife, should be very different than if you're trying to do one that is like, I want you to go research what really is going on with this type of cancer, right, as an example. And so I think this is exactly knowing when, and then the last point is knowing when to upgrade, right? If you're on the free version and you're starting to use it a lot, and then it gives you, okay, you're kind of done for the day, you've used me too much, right? It might be time to spend the $20, right? Justify. The $200 is a lot more. I totally get it. I like to think of the free version of ChatGPT as like having a part-time intern with you all the time just doing things for you. The $20 version is having a full-time intern because you can talk to them anytime you want. And the pro version is like having 100 interns just doing huge amounts of research for you all the time. And so it depends if you're at a company, you're like $200 a month, that's still a lot per month. That is 25 times cheaper than a single intern that you would get. 25, so, okay, all the young people in the audience, the 4 of you, are thinking, you're thinking, oh God, this is coming after my job. Like, so luckily for me, I'm not too worried, right? I'm like, okay, this is not, I'll be okay, but because I don't have 50 years of work left. But I would say, if you are a young person, I would not be petrified. I would just be armed with this, if that makes sense, right? There's a great quote, right? It's only here to take your job if you refuse to learn how to use it. right? And I think this is so important. You guys have to fully absorb this technology. Do not resist it. Do not be scared. Do not be avoiding it. Every person in a profession that's going to be disrupted either has to embrace it or will be disrupted, right? Lawyers are now using it to read all of their briefs, draft contracts, look at precedents, right? Dentists, I think there's a dentist. Dentists are now using it. The AI tools can actually predict cavities much sooner. They can what's the other one? Farmers. Farmers are using AI to like hover over and optimize their harvest. So if farmers are able to, plant potatoes better, I'm sure you guys can handle it, right? You guys can't be like, Excel macros, that's still pretty high tech for me, right? Okay, good. All right. And what are the limitations? So what can it not do? I would say, this is going to sound a little bit scary, but I've been working with computers an extremely long time. I think there is almost nothing that AI will not be able to do, okay? You heard it here first. Literally almost nothing. For those of you that still think your brain has some kind of superpower that a computer doesn't, I'm sorry, you are incorrect. If you think, well, I've got the creative spark, I'm sorry, computers are more creative, can do far more creative music. They will play more catchy music. They will make better videos, better Hollywood, better actors, better actresses, better everything. The question is, if you resist it and you're opposed to it and you dig your feet back in and say, that's absurdity, I will never, it can never paint as good as me. It doesn't mean you can't paint and you shouldn't make your own music and you shouldn't do those things. You absolutely should for entertainment, but you shouldn't resist the fact that this is coming and it's coming at a breakneck speed. So the question is, do you capitalize on that? Do you instead take your piece of art and tell AI, make me 1,000 different versions of this, or tell me how to market this, or tell me how to make money on this so I can make 700 more pictures in my lifetime? That's the example of that same artist not resisting the AI and just camped out in their room and painting and depressed, but instead saying, I'm going to use this to explode my creativity. Give me 10 more things I can draw today, right? But no, actually keep it in just this range, right? I really like landscapes. You get the idea. Embracing these things with an open mind is actually, because this is coming, right? It's not like you standing on the side is going to make AI slow down, right? This is coming at an insanely fast rate. So it's important. I would say there are some fields, if I was going to advise young people to not go into, radiology is not the best field. Sorry for any radiologists here, but they already know. Every single radiologist I've talked to says, I will never be as good as a computer at diagnosing things. Ever. Literally ever. There is no type of cancer in the world that a radiologist will see better than a computer. Just imagine what that means. And the reason for this is not that the radiologist is not good. It's not that they're not trained. It's not that they get tired or they miss a small smudge or shadow that they didn't see. It's that they don't even know what to look for. Computers are able to see patterns at scale. They see millions of images, so they can see weird peripheries that happen to end up being cancer, and so they know that earlier. So this is the issue, right? This is why in that field in particular is going to get disrupted and is already getting disrupted significantly more quickly. However, if you take other fields, I think surgery, general surgery, you got more time. You probably have 10, 20, 30 years even. And the reason you have that is because robotics is going to be much, much slower. So if you are in a field that is physically using your hands, you have more time, right? And so these are the kinds of things. So ironically, the jobs that are going to go away are the ones that require much more education. And the ones that require less are actually going to be much more prevalent and much longer, right? So the waiters and waitresses, as weird as it sounds, are going to be in extreme, they're much safer, let's say, right, for a long time. Which also means, by the way, there's going to be a lot of people that are leaving the knowledge worker workforce, which is already happening, and they're going to be looking for waiter and waitress jobs. It's not a horrible, bad thing. There's going to be a shift in what people are doing. There will be, where is all this jobs going? People say, well, there'll be new jobs coming because of this. How fantastic, how exciting. There will be, right? There will be people, data centers, people creating chips, all of that will happen. But the net impact on jobs will be lower. So again, knowing that and looking ahead and making sure you're looking at your own job and what you are doing and saying, how will it be disrupted? When will it be disrupted? And how do I get ahead of that? And if you don't believe me, sit and talk to ChatGPT even for 10 minutes. Say, this is my job. Will it get disrupted? Is it already being disrupted? Is it already happening? What pace is this going to happen? Is this happening in 5 years, 10 years? What should I do to be ahead of it? A lot of people, I've already told 3 or 4 people this time that I've been here, is the first thing you should do is go on LinkedIn if you guys are doing it and change your profile to say, I'm an AI expert in this field. And by doing it, even if you spend 3 to 4 days learning how AI can impact your role, all of a sudden you're 10 times more marketable because every single company is looking for people that can come in, bring in someone that knows how to do it with AI so they can start to reduce their force massively. And so again, being ahead of that, so now all of a sudden you're employable versus you are being receded from the workforce. So I would say, it is good to know the limits of what AI can do, right? The example I gave of physical things is actually going to take much longer, right? Because it's very capital intensive, very hard. The dexterity that you need for surgery and those types of things, the agility is very different. There's also another example, right? That things that AI is still not great at. I was talking to my Waymo friend that I mentioned. I was sitting at dinner with him and I said, autonomous driving is doing phenomenal. How are you guys doing? He says, you know where it's getting tripped up right now? I said, where? These cars are everywhere. You guys, Waymo is now, right, you can hail a Waymo in I think 4 different cities, right? You know, I said, where is it getting tripped up? He said our autonomous cars are going up to, these cars are going up to 4-way stop signs and they're just stopping. They're freaked out because there's 3 other cars and it doesn't, what do humans do? We naturally are actually very good at looking and going, are you going? I don't know. And the other thing we do, who's done this at a 4-way stop? You nudge. You're like, I'm going to go in and see if anyone runs into my face, right? And so the Waymo's not going to do that. It's like, I'm not going to nudge into the middle of an interstate and put this poor passenger at risk and they're going to die. So it had to teach it how to nudge, right? Imagine you're trying to teach a car to kind of have a little bit more aggressive personality. This is a good example of places where, now I'm not saying go into a job where you need intuition to nudge into a 4-way interstate. I don't even know that exists, but this is an example of the kind of thing that it's good to know where AI has limitations in. All right. Oh my God, I got to go fast. Okay. Where can you exploit AI? This is the core of the presentation, but I will skip through. Is basically say if you are at a company, you should look at all areas, not just operational efficiencies, which is the most common. How can I reduce 80% of my people? Because now AI can do it faster, better, cheaper, right? Always be thinking faster, better, cheaper, right? If it does all 3, which it does, sadly. But the bigger one is all the top line stuff you can do. Take your single customer life cycle from creating an innovative product, AI will help you, to finding leads, creating interest, getting people to convert, getting people to pay more and upsell, right? Getting people to stay on and loyalty things, you can send them. And so every single one of those 7 stages you can actually do better with AI. So think about it in all of those ways. All right, and what should you use at your own company? Should you use a carrot or stick? I have seen both. The carrot is when someone does something with AI that's amazing, you should prop them up. You should say, this is amazing. Look what Josie did. This was so awesome. Saved us all this money or made us all this money. All of you should do that. And now the other people get excited and they feel empowered to do it. Or the other option is the stick, which is, I want you to tell me every single thing you did today and why you did it the old way. And I want you to, and people are, some companies are doing this. Sadly, a lot of the Doge stuff is also doing. But in the other column on the side, they literally are writing next to it, why didn't you use AI? I want you to tell me exactly why you didn't use AI for this. Imagine now this is draining on the morale and all those things, but this is why it's so important. Ideally, your type of culture is the former, not the latter, where you are rewarding and empowering, which tends to work better anyway for those of you that know psychology. Okay, so remember, if you are not thinking AI first, you're probably thinking last. Okay, that was a joke. Okay, so now I know what you're thinking. We're at the very, very end, I promise. What's the first step you should take on this? Some of you are thinking, oh God, I'm way too old for this crap. I still have a Yahoo email address. I'm not technical. I don't know what's going on. No, you lost me at neural networks. When the hell is lunch? I think, I would say the first step is just ask yourself for anything you're doing, literally at any point, even drafting an email, whatever, can AI be doing what I'm doing right now, faster, better, or cheaper? If it can, you should do it. I think the second thing you should do is install, if you have a Mac or a PC, install the desktop version of an AI tool so that you can just hit, option space or whatever, so you can instantly have that little box up. It is a very, very good idea. It's free, I promise you, but it makes a huge difference. Your accessibility to that tool on your phone, if you can shortcut it, or I don't know if Apple has widgets, but anyway, okay. And pay for the better subscription if you start to run out. Don't be like, I'm all done, $20 is too much. You're spending $20 to watch Tiger King crap. You should spend $20 to help your entire life. Okay, like what the hell? Subscribe to some newsletters. If you want to know all of the amazing, there's literally things happening every single day in this field. I would subscribe to some really great newsletters. The Rundown AI is a great newsletter. Ben's Bites is a great newsletter. I get both of these, and I'm constantly seeing all of the new stuff that's coming out. You do not have to compete with AI. You can partner with it, all right? So I'll leave you with a few quotes that I really like. In this new world of AI, right, the biggest winners are going to be the ones, are not necessarily going to be the ones with the most experience, okay? The biggest winners are going to be the ones that are most willing to experiment and try new things. It doesn't mean every single thing that you're going to do is right, but it'll make a big, big difference. All right. So what have we learned? AI does not need to be only about replacing people. It can also be about giving people superpowers, right? All of you. And the future doesn't necessarily belong to those who are the youngest and the fastest. It belongs to those who are the most curious, the most courageous, the most committed to doing things differently. And to close it all up, closing thoughts. These are the two keys that I have seen single-handedly transform any company, tiny or huge. If you just do these two things, you will turn your good company into a legendary one. These aren't just my slogans, these little trademarks. These are my trademarked blueprints for innovation and transformative growth. You now have all the knowledge that you ever needed to know. I'm kidding. When you think exponentially and you think artificially, the impossible doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. So thank you, everyone. I hope this was interesting and useful, and I can take questions now. Are we out of time? Questions? Do we have time? 2 minutes, 1 minute.
So,
okay, 1 minute, yes.
Yeah, the serious part, then the funny part.
Yes, yes.
The serious part is that when calculators came in, until calculators came in, including my father, they could do 2 2s are 4 and they could multiply exponentially. Post calculations, the human intelligence got destroyed because of artificial intelligence, so-called. Number two, when cell phones came in, we forgot the numbers of our most dear ones, homes, etc.
Correct.
So it made us impotent in terms of, our intelligence. Now this is very interesting. I've done this case study. World's most beautiful set of breasts were amputated because Angelina Jolie's AR diagnostic said the probability amplitude of cancer markers are there and there is a very remote chance of it happening. Now which is there in all of us? She got her both breasts removed. So thank you to AI. Number two, if that would be the case, AI could be very destructive also, but use AI as a master and please don't become its slave because we've created it. Remain the father of intelligence, even the father of artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Is this the question, or that was just a story? No. I would say the reality is...
I just wanted to bring certain things on form.
I agree. Yeah. This is a perfect example of resisting, and this is exactly the concern.
I'm going to use AI in my business, for sure.
All I'm saying is, this is exactly... I'm saying looking for examples where it doesn't work is not going to stop what's happening. So the issue is, I would say make sure you don't think it's infallible by any means. I would say absolutely it's going to... by the way, it probably makes far more mistakes than it does things well. So this is a good example of when to know when to use it, right? Use it, like you said, for the breast, a good example. Use it as a marker and then have multiple radiologists investigate it, do proper biopsies. I would not have just relied on AI blindly at this stage, right? But at some point when AI is actually better at diagnosing it, then you won't have regular radiologists anymore. But you have a very good point. Yes?
Hi. Thank you very much, Cyrus. Very interesting discussion. I'm going to ask you a question on the flip side of AI. I'm very much in favor of AI. I'm in content creation. I'm fully aware that AI is going to make life very difficult for content creators. But I'm also the vice president of, vice chairman of one of Canada's leading groups on nuclear weapons. And we are very concerned about AI because there's a flip side to AI. And you're already nodding, but there's a flip side. And the flip side is if all the nuclear weapons countries are now spending trillions of dollars upgrading their weapon systems, it's an existential threat to humanity. If nuclear weapons or space-based weapons become controlled by AI, we might have a future that we can't predict. So my question to you is, while you've given us a lot of good examples of why AI might help humanity, it also might bring humanity to an end. So the question is, do we as an international community, do we as a country in Canada, do we as an international community put guardrails on AI and say, this is acceptable, in your little company it's acceptable, but putting nuclear weapons as an example, governed by AI is not acceptable? Should we have guardrails? Can we enforce guardrails around the world? If Canada does it, will China and Russia agree? Where are the limits of AI?
It's a good question. And it's similar to Dr. Mendes, I think also very good point that there are absolutely issues. There's huge teams thinking about ethical, like you can look it up. I mean, there's literally enormous organizations thinking about the ethical ramifications of this because it's coming so fast, and sadly, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, that's the end of it. So I would say there are simple things that governments are doing. For instance, they keep them on a completely separate network that is not attached to any AI. So it's not a matter of programming the AI to not do it, because the AI may just decide to not listen one day. So if there is actually a connection between these computers that would become artificially generally intelligent and a connection to the, to the ability to launch, that would, so keeping it on a completely separate network, a completely separate way of running it, as an example, right, where it still remains manual, is one example. But again, you can even forecast from that. If I was to look even further ahead, say even if you kept those computers completely separate, as soon as someone makes an autonomous robot, the robot could figure out a way to hack in, get into the system, go in and go press the button manually. And so these are the kinds of things you just have to make sure you're constantly in an arms race with the computer. It won't matter what people sit and think about. It matters what you technically do, right? And there may be no technical ability to stop that. I don't know. I actually don't know. I'm not I'm not super stressed about the planet like fully imploding, but you're 100% right. I mean, we don't know. Yeah.
I just think you're brilliant, and I really enjoyed it because I know nothing about AI. But I want to ask you a question. Can AI help me if there's a teardrop? Can it tell me whether it's from joy or from sorrow?
Meaning the actual teardrop, the biology of it?
No,
Or the face, meaning when you are crying, does it know?
not the chemical composition. She
When
means.
you take the teardrop and you examine it, can you tell
Yes,
what emotion it came from?
So the question is, well, I don't know about AI, but I think you're asking whether there is a biological difference between the teardrop of happiness and sadness. I don't know that there is. You might know.
She's asking whether AI can predict that.
Can AI predict if it's from sorrow or from
AI
joy?
probably would know it based on the face and what you were doing at the time, but it
That's
would
really
not.
interesting.
I don't know if there's any chemical difference between the two teardrops.
Cyrus, it's slightly more important. When I go back to England, I run the Asher Centre, and in Britain, the government has stopped all grants to all the faith communities. So I've decided I'm not going to put up with that. So all the leaders of the faith communities are going to come to Asher for 3 days. And one of the things they wanted was somebody to talk about AI and faith. I didn't know anybody. I really want to invite you, or you need to do a voiceover for them to explain how can AI help people who are running faith communities. Now, if you can do that, I think that is really courageous, a real breakthrough. and then you'll be something completely different.
And you could, right? If you're running
How
a faith
would you do
community,
it?
if you're running and someone else who was asking me, how can we get more Parsis to create more kids using AI? And I'm like, well, I don't think that you should mate with AI to do that. But I did give the example. I said the way you do that is, if you want to increase faith participation, for instance, you need to ask AI for the full blueprint. How would I do this? What are the big issues that I do? I need to raise awareness. I need to do marketing. I need to test different messaging. I need to put it on the right platforms. I need to put it on TikTok. I need to make viral videos. And so what you actually want to do is have it give you the full plan of how do I market it? What's the message I want to say? How do I say it? How do I raise money to do it? If you need money in order to do all this marketing and to create the videos, you need to start with money. What's the best way to raise money? And so the thing is to not try to guess at how would I do it. You just literally have to ask AI how to do it. And it will tell you. It'll walk you through the entire plan, right?
I need your help.
I will help you. No
I
problem.
need your help,
Yes.
and because this is going to be the biggest breakthrough.
I love it.
Okay?
Game on.
So you and I
Okay.
are going to do it.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Okay. Yes. Are we almost? Yes.
I have a question.
Oh, and him. There's three there. Oh, shh.
I want to ask you, according to evolution, we stop using our brains and let AI do everything for us. Are we going to turn out to be a society of totally brainless idiots depending on a machine to tell us what
by
it's
the way,
going to do?
so Dr. Mehta was 100% right in this. I will say, look, if you, again, thinking exponentially, thinking far ahead, what's actually going to happen here? Most likely, you're going to have to start using your brain less. I mean, have anyone seen that
Exactly.
weird, dystopian, scary Wall-E movie? Right? If you remember what all of those people were doing at the end, where they forecasted those people would be, they became massively obese. Their bones couldn't hold their weight. They were sitting in little floating pods having a big 7-Eleven slushie, right?
So is
because
that
was
our
their life.
future?
I'm not, again, I don't want to be so scary and negative, but the reality
No,
is,
I
if you
want to-
forecast ahead, right? When I was in 5th grade, I was taught the capitals of every single state. Maybe in Canada, all the far fewer provinces. But you get the idea. I had to write them down. Now, they don't teach that anymore, because why would I teach you the capitals of every single state? Some people say, well, general knowledge is very critical. Not really. To know that Bismarck is the capital of whatever the hell, North Dakota, is not important. What's more important is, can you have critical thinking? Can you think about why the capital was put there? But even that, sadly, is
even
no
that-
longer interesting, because now I can ask it, why did the capital...
But AI won't
Yes,
allow us to have that critical thinking.
Right, so
it won't.
that's 100%
And
correct.
also, I feel, just an example, when you have a mobile phone and you say it's one of the greatest discoveries, do you know what destruction it has caused in the Congo?
100%.
It is the largest genocide in the world, and nobody knows about it. Nobody talks about it, because that filament that is found only in the Congo is raided by the Rwandans, where entire tribes are decimated.
All tech has pros and cons. This is a good example of it's coming. How do we best work within this world, right? So I completely agree with you. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sorry. What are your thoughts on when will AI take over the job of its creators?
So it already is. AI was created by programmers. The programmers are already, sadly, they thought they would be one of the last people to go. If you go to v0.dev, you can say, make me this application. I want it to work this way. Make me this game. It will literally code it in about 90 seconds for free. You will literally see the code being written, and they'll be like, here's your app. So you imagine you have an idea for an iPhone app. Now you used to say, I don't know what to do about this. Now you can literally make that iPhone app in 90 seconds. This is so terrifying to those millions and millions of computer programmers around the world that are saying, now this can code better than me, faster than me, and cheaper than me, right? This is why I'm saying, we can resist it, we can be nervous, or you can be like, I need to figure out what the hell, and maybe that job at Big Boy serving burgers is sounding really good. Okay, I think that's good. I
Cyrus,
think
I'll ask you
yes,
one question.
One last one, okay.
Fantastic presentation, excellent,
Thank you.
beautiful in every way. I've got a moral question to ask you.
Yes.
Okay, I was reading an article on the plane coming into Toronto about big companies like Facebook, and I'll name Facebook here because they're promoting these bots to children, where the bots are actually AI bots, and I love AI because I use it in my business, but these are promoting bots to children, and children are committing suicide. I think that was highlighted in the show Adolescence, though I've not watched it. It's on Netflix. Now, what do you think of the moral side of AI? How does big tech promote something like that? Because I think Zuckerberg said once, we'd be happy to break it. Now, you don't want to break a child's life. It breaks the parents, it breaks the family. So where does AI stop for, or where does big tech stop AI for these sort of things?
Yeah, so one is two parts to the question. How do we handle AI in a better way, and what do we do about big tech? Because the two are separate. Even if you handle the big tech, now AI is so accessible, literally anyone can use it at any time, even if it's not put out by one of the big tech companies with OpenAI or Google or X. The issue is now I can grab an open source free AI and do it, right? Yep. So even if you stop the big tech, but other people were doing it. So the question is more around ethical standards. I think this was also asked here by Firdaus.
Yes, that's
right?
what Firdaus
Firdaus asked the same thing, is what are the ethical boundaries we should put around this? And the hope is that people using it understand the scale of what it can do, and they are all hopefully being good stewards of the technology, right?
But they're promoting it. See, the thing is, these bots are being promoted to underage children.
I completely agree with you. I mean, it's the same thing as calculators have caused as much destruction as they've caused good, right? It's the same exact issue. It's just a tool, but in the end, the calculator was used to create nuclear war, right? So this is the question is, do you get rid of calculators, or do we agree that they're here to stay? Right? So but I agree with you, 100%. Thank you, good. Sorry, I went way over. Okay.